Good evening, good afternoon, and good morning. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to Connect Africa to our live streaming session here with Kwame Gonza, where we spill the tea and analyze things based on research. For tonight, we are going to look at how did France give in, what makes France to decide this. We're gonna go deep into it. That's why we have Kwame here. So welcome, Kwame.
Thank you, Mahlet, and everyone who is watching us on Connect Africa. We are really glad and thank you for being part of the channel and subscribing to the channel. It really means us. Uh, your support means really a lot. And as Mahlet has mentioned, we want to look at why, did France leave? What led to the leaving France? And of course, what is the future? What does the future hold? We understand also that the United States is in Niger. So what is it? What is it exactly that the United States is in Niger, and what threat does the United States represent? Not only to Niger, but to the whole African continent. Because remember, the United States has fought very hard to stay in there. So these are the things which we want to examine. And then what is the future of Niger and the African continent, of course, after this victory against France? And so these are the things which we want to examine tonight. Thank you very much, Mahlet. Back to you, please.
Thank you, Kwame. Indeed, during the day, we have brought you some short, brief news regarding the decision of pulling out of the ambassador and the troops. The decision, not yet. Maybe the ambassador has been recalled, but again, and we left you there in those short, brief news. How asking a question, what about ECOWAS now? What are they going to do? And still, we have U.S. troops in Niger. Those things we are going to look at in a lengthy discussion here. So let's dive into it, Kwame. First of all, is it a surprise? How did France come up to this decision, although it's kind of expected, but it seems forever since it has been resistant, and somehow it seemed it looks like they wanted to put it in their own terms, like, okay, we decide, not because you told us so. In any case, please tell us how come. Was it a surprise for you?
Yeah, so actually did not want to go, and that is the truth. They still wanted to stay in Niger and continue because there was so much at stake. There was so much at stake, but there's a lot of intervening events that have really made them ashamed. There's a lot of intervening events which have shamed them. Those being the fact that the government in Niger has insisted, it has held the ground. And so this shows you that if you have a government that is Pan-Africanist, and it holds the ground and insists on the right thing, these imperialists, they cannot win. So that is one truth that needs to be taken into account. But now, also what we are seeing is that the consciousness of the people across the African continent has risen very high, that people are not more buying into the Western narrative because people know that it is a lie. Just even as you see the issue in Ukraine, of course they insist, even the United States is insisting, the Western world is insisting. And they have been pushing this narrative. We saw this at the G20 summit in India. They wanted to take over the summit and plant the Ukraine narrative, but people were able to resist this, and majorly the global South. And what was meant by Russia at the United Nations General Assembly recently in their speech at the ongoing United Nations General Assembly, the 78th, that this group of people, the Europeans, who are the minority, including the United States, of course, they are the minority. They want to continue the suppression of the majority people of the world. So this is the picture in which France also falls. And the people have realized to be suppressed anymore. We will not accept it to be suppressed anymore. And so you see that people came out in huge numbers to support the military government. You saw what happened, that a stadium of over 30,000 people was filled in support of the military government. So this also shows people have been suffocating, even in a lot of countries. You go to countries, people are suffocating under neocolonialism. They want, but in some way, as we mentioned, especially in the former British colonies, there is a way people are being suffocated silently with lies, but people know the truth. Now, France could not overcome the that consciousness that has risen, especially from in the former French colonies. Even we see countries like Senegal. In Senegal, also people are demonstrating. They have wanted to overthrow the government. Long time, if the military, people would have celebrated even in Senegal, because in Senegal it has also been like that. 21. And we know that Senegal is already close to France. We have seen that Senegal is one of those who wanted to contribute to the aggression in Niger, Senegal, and Ivory Coast. And Ivory Coast, of course, we know that there is a puppet there already. Ouattara is an absolute puppet. Everyone knows that. That is an open book. Is an absolute puppet to France. It's being controlled from France. So the pressure from the people, the insistence of the government in Niger, France became ashamed. Now, there's another issue also. The fact that in Gabon also there was a coup, and France did not react in the same way that it reacted to Niger. Also, this one emboldened the military government in Niger, and they became bold. They became much more bold. Actually, if you remember, before the coup in Gabon, there was a lot of pressure. The pressure was extreme. But when the coup in Gabon happened, this coup actually took a lot of attention from the military leaders in Niger. Some pressure was taken, and this also emboldened them. Now, these are the few intervening issues which I'm seeing. Now, the other issue which you can mention also is the United States. The United States betrayed France. You remember that Victoria Nuland went in to cut corners. She went in to cut corners to pass behind the back of France. The United States has been doing this because it has realized, the United States has realized that the people, they hate France, they're tired of France. And now, the United States is trying to distance itself from France so that it can, because this is like a which is happening, and the United States doesn't want to be part of, it doesn't want to be swallowed by this revolution. So it has distanced itself from this, revolution. But of course, there's something to be, to be careful around there, because the United States is more sinister, is more evil compared even to France. Because what we are dealing with the issue of France, remnants of the 1960s. France's presence has been the remnants of the 1960s. France was supposed to go away way back in the 1960s. So I can promise you that Niger is out of the danger zone right now. Because right now, what these countries are dealing with France, they are the remnants of the 1960s, the remnants of colonialism of the 1960s, which was overthrown by majority of the other countries before they would enter, before they would be ushered into full neocolonialism. So happening in the former French colonies was that majority of the countries were dealing with both neocolonialism and the old colonialism. Time it was much more brutal. That is why you see that Niger is one of the poorest countries in the world. So they were dealing with the two types of colonialism: the old colonialism, which started in 1884, and they were also dealing with the new, which came with the United States and the presence of the United States, which the United States is subjecting the rest of the world to, whether you're talking about Latin America, whether you're talking about these former British colonies, which are majority, majorly in East Africa and some, of course, in West Africa, Ghana. So that is the United States colonialism, neocolonialism. But these countries, for them, they had gone out of all the colonialism of the British. So this is the danger now, that still not out of the danger zone. So if they are entering, if they leave the United States there, they're just entering into a new, each countries like Ghana, South Africa, and all the others already in. So this is what I see. So the betrayal by the United States played a very big role. The pressure which the coup which happened in Gabon brought some sort of shame within the French that they had to, and of course the insistence of the government, they held their ground, they insisted, because legitimacy is about insisting. Legitimacy of a government is not about voting. Legitimacy of a government is about the support of the people. Now, if the people have given you support and you insist, people, they don't to support you. You can come, like what we see in China. The legitimacy of a government just hinges on the support of the people. When they take polls, for example, the Pew Research Center, normally it takes polls. Shows you when they take polls, even in these past years, all these years which are past, the Chinese government has more support among its population compared to all the Western world governments. Some of them are at 30%, but the Chinese government is around 80% if they take the polls. And these polls are taken by Western organization. This Pew Research Center, Western organization. So it shows you that the legitimacy of a government does depend on elections, on voting. So we see like people like Bazoum was very unpopular in Niger. So the played a major role. And now the other issue which we see, the masses, these are the things which led to for France to back off. You know, government insisted, they blocked off the embassy. The guy was suffering. And of course, their military also, which is they are going to withdraw, suffocating. It was in huge trouble. They were fearful of the people. So it shows you that however much a military is powerful, if the people come up and say out, it doesn't matter how many guns you have. It doesn't matter how many, military planes you have. The people will defeat you. So this is a lesson to actually, especially all the revolutionaries and people who are fighting against neocolonialism, to seek always the support of the people, because once the people are behind you, you defeat anything, like how Niger has defeated France.
Thank you, Kwame, for that. And thank you, family, for tuning in here. Keep coming, the comments, keep them coming, and your questions as well. We try to be as brief as possible in terms of what we are planning to cover here tonight. So if time allows it, then we will be taking a question. So if you have a related question, please drop them in the chat section. Now, one of the things that France has been threatening was that if they leave, then the war against terrorism will be just worse. And we have seen also in Mali by the border, these terrorists is attacking, and also I think in Niger some time ago, it happened after even the revolution. Now, and also the US is what is the same reason that they threaten if they go on as if like. But on the other hand, also there is evidence that shows, in fact, this the number of insurgents and the number of incidents increased after this foreign military started to settle in, and especially after Libya. So now these are the two sides of stories regards to the insurgents. Now that it didn't leave yet, but France has promised to leave, and they say by the end of the year. Why until then? Even that's even also another question. But if they leave, what will be, the war against terrorism? Do you think it will be less? Meaning, if we take the other side, that they're the one who are weaponizing them, or it will be worse? Then, if so, will the military authority be able to administer it, to
Yeah,
handle it?
so yes, so Mahlet, that question is always put out there with the assumption that the Africans are incapable, and the strategy of neocolonialism has been always to weaken the African militaries, to weaken the African state, so that you will not have a strong state that defends the interests of the people. And of course, that is the resource. So this has been a major strategy. And that strategy is rooted in colonialism and racism, because you can claim that France with 1,500 troops is better than the 45,000 Nigerian troops. So logically, this doesn't make sense. It does not make sense. This narrative, they have been working with the media, their mainstream media, which mainstream media is majorly against Africa, the mainstream media, because they get their paychecks from the same imperialists, from the same system, whether you're talking about World Economic Forum, whether you're talking about the United States. These people, they control the mainstream media. People, they always present the white man or the European as the one with the solution, and then put down the African as incapable of managing his own affair. So this narrative is actually rooted in racism, absolute racism, and superiority complex, and thinking that the African cannot manage but it is not true. It is not true. We have seen that these people, they are the same people who brought the insecurity. The NATO, they brought the insecurity in the Sahel with the overthrow of the government in Libya. These so-called terrorists they are talking about, is financing them? Is it some satanic angels from down in hell who are dropping in the Sahel? Where are they coming from? So these are the questions I think people have to ask really hard questions. So that narrative, I think Africans have to defeat it. We have to defeat that narrative. It's the same narrative of what we were talking about here yesterday, or what, about a few days ago. And we are asking, we have been lied to that China owns the biggest Africa's debt. But what do the figures really say if we examine the figures? The truth is that if you examine the figures, the Western world, they are the ones who are burdening Africa with the debt, because they own 77% of Africa's debt. And China owns only 13% of Africa's debt. But they always try to twist, they try to play with your mind and twist your mind so that they can turn the devil into an angel, and then the angel into the devil. Okay, so this does not mean that China is an angel, but this is just an example I'm trying to give. And then this goes back or to remind you about what Malcolm X said. Malcolm X said one time that if you are not careful, the media, the innocent, the media turns the innocent. Be careful of the media because it turns the innocent into the criminal and it turns the criminal into the innocent. And that's seeing here. The constant putting down of the African and then claiming that the African needs the white man, needs the European to help him to do everything, anything, to supervise his government, to supervise his economy, to supervise his security. It is a strategic move to weaken African militaries, African state, so that the African state can be susceptible to begging and asking the white man and the European so-called imperialists to come in for help, and so they can have access to the resources. Was the major strategy that was being used to remove the strong African government like the one of Muammar Gaddafi, so that the terrorists which they created, the terrorists they created in the Middle East can flow into Africa and the governments will fall, all the governments will be destroyed, and they are the ones who are financing these terrorists. The United States and the Europeans, they are the ones who are financing these terrorists because they created them in the Middle East. It is not Africa who created these terrorists in the, in the continent. They didn't just drop from some hole, or they didn't drop from heaven, or they didn't just come out of a hole or from a grave and then they are terrorists from somewhere, like vomited them from somewhere. They came from somewhere. And these people, they have a big part, and they don't mention that. You will never hear them mentioning that they played a part in bringing these terrorists. So this narrative by France that if the situation will get bad is a false narrative, because we have seen even in Mali that in Mali, when they have gone out, when they have been kicked out, the place has stabilized. It's much better than before. Because even when the French were there, they were killing even our people, the innocent people in villages, and claiming that they are killing terrorists. They are going in the villages and they are killing people. The reports are there. Mali has come out also with reports that the French have been sponsoring the terrorists. That information is not put out in the media and the mainstream. And Mali gave a speech last year at the 77th United Nations General Assembly last year, and representative of Mali who spoke at the United Nations mentioned this, that France has been sponsoring. We have evidence, but they buried such speeches in the ground and make it look like these speeches are illegitimate. These facts are illegitimate, and yet this is a government which is mentioning that France has been disturbing, it has been sending aircraft in our territory. So why is France sending aircraft in the territory if they have been told that it should go away? Mali told them they should go away. Niger told them, go away, we do not need you, we do not need your help. We are going to solve this problem by ourselves. So it is an attempt to delegitimize or to make the African authority illegitimate in every way, legitimize colonialism, but subtly when we are not, when we are not aware, maybe when the people, the common people who are not so sophisticated in understanding the workings of neocolonialism are not paying attention. They think that these guys have come to pay, any help. They have come to give us some help. The truth is that these people are not coming here to give us any help. So I can tell you that when France withdraws or the United States, this place will stabilize much more better. Rwanda, when there was a genocide, the Europeans never came there to stabilize the country for them. Rwanda single-handedly stabilized the country and right now is growing. In the Congo, they have failed to stabilize the situation. They have been in the Congo, Democratic Republic of Congo, for 60 years. And the President Tshisekedi right now is saying they should get out because they have failed. And it shows you that they are not there to stabilize the situation. They are there to exploit the resources. And we have seen that the United Nations has been participating in extracting resources in the Congo, even raping. Reports are there. The United Nations troops have been raping women, our women in the Democratic Republic of Congo. It is just a massive narrative that they want to use. They want to use the failure and to mask the colonialism which they are trying to push upon and force it on the African people.
So now, what will be the fate of the relation between France and the United States that U.S. has been quiet for so long, and all they did is to relocate their military, and no, unlike France, no order of evacuation to U.S. has been issued by the military administration. Um, and another thing, I think tonight, just a couple of hours ago, they say they will revisit their relation with Niger following France's, because France is kicked out. Is it
So what
something?
the United States,
Yeah, is it a cover, or are they really worried?
of course, that what the United States is doing is a cover. It's just trying to cover so that the Europeans will not realize that it has already cut it. It had already cut a deal with the military government in Niger. And that is why you see that Victoria Nuland was going there. And of course, this should worry us a little bit also as Africans. Why is the United States is, staying in? Is it possible that the military government in Niger cut a deal with the United States? Because like I mentioned, 1965, Nkrumah published the book Neo-Colonialism, The Last Stage of Imperialism. The country he warned about the most, it was the United States, because he knew the workings of the United States. It is more brutal. The United States is much more brutal and sinister and satanic in how it operates, that it may be there when it is preparing to overthrow the government. And we saw that, of course, Russian intelligence published information that they were preparing to kill the leader. So that is one dimension that you can speak of what the United States is trying to prepare in there. Now, the other dimension could be that the military government is trying to take this slowly by slowly, because if you look at the speech which President Tiani, the provisional president, gave after the withdrawal of France, or what the government said that they will allow anyone, regardless of whether it is an organization who is in the country, to destabilize them, and any person who is trying to destabilize the country will be removed from the country. So I took this as a subtle, silent response to the of the United States, because the United States has a huge military base there with drones, and those drones have been used to torment and spy on majority of the African continent. Because you cannot tell us that there's terrorists there which required by the United States to come to the African continent. Africa can deal with its problems. And all these African heads of state who are saying that Africa cannot deal with its own security problems, they are complete sellouts to the United States and the Europeans. Africa can deal with its own security problems. We have the youngest population in Africa. They just need to be trained, and we raise an army, a unified army in Africa, and deal with our own security problems. We do not need the United States. So the military drones by the United States, unless they are here to spy on. So it could be a strategy by the government in Niger to try to deal with the French problem slowly, and then of course come and touch the so-called untouchable United States, because they know that the United States has unlimited resources when it comes, of course, to intelligence, when it comes to aggression, when it comes to the media and its propaganda. It has almost unlimited resources to deal with any resistance. So I think that it could be strategic in that point. So I gave you two scenarios. It is possible that they want to hold on a little bit and deal with the United States at the right time, because they did not want to deal with the United States because they saw that the United States had already become desperate in the beginning, of course, with the sending in of Victoria Newland. So the military government, it is possible it might have read that the United States has become desperate and have wanted to use this as an opportunity to separate France and the United States and deal with France first, so that the United States can think that they are going to give leeway for it. And then when they defeat France, then they can come and deal with the United States later. So that could be a strategy. And so what we are seeing is that it is possible that the relationship with the United States and France is going to continue to be strained, because France now thinks that it has trade. Of course, these things, they will not say them in broad daylight, but France right now thinks that it has been betrayed by the United States. So the United States in itself, it is saying this thing that is going to be to review the relationship with the government in, because it knows that it has already.
You were muted, Kwame.
Yes, can you hear me, Mahlet?
Yeah, very good. Yeah,
Okay.
so
Okay.
you can repeat the last 1 minute.
Yes. So the United States is trying to. It could separate. It could have tensions with France, even though of course they have their neo-colonial together, such as in Ukraine and all this. But their relationship would be strained more, and that's what I'm seeing. The United States wanted to cover up with this, saying that they want to review the relationship with Niger. They want to cover up the fact that they are already, been stabbing France in the back by trying to cut with the government in Niger. So their relationship is going to be a little bit, and of course, this is very good for the continent of Africa.
Now, another thing that was also quite in the beginning, it was very noisy, threatening Niger with military intervention and whatever, what have you there. But then it went quiet, and that is ECOWAS, the regional bloc. Now that the one really that wants the war is have decided to leave Niger, what is the fate of ECOWAS with its relation in Niger? They have sanctioned the country for the past 2 months, and still they have not denounced their military intervention. Even without France, are they going to tell us restore the president, or they're going to come back with a new dress?
So the fate of ECOWAS actually is that ECOWAS is going to be weakened more and more, and members are going to continue to disrespect it. And of course, when it comes to the African people, they don't respect it anymore because of the position it took. But ECOWAS's approach was predictable. You remember this channel here, we mentioned and we analyzed it when it comes to the military strength. If you look at the military strength of the three countries, Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger, around 75,000 troops. And it is likely all these troops were going to be put on the front to fight the war. If you look at the countries in ECOWAS who had contributed to the troops, they could not even make up to 5,000 troops. So if you cannot make even half of the troops, you cannot make up half of the troops which you are going to fight against. How are you going to fight that? So that was the people who understand the military strategy. They immediately knew that what ECOWAS was doing was bluffing. Now, that is number one. Number two, when you look at ECOWAS, we are already divided. Majority of them, they were not willing to contribute troops. So all these meetings, it shows you that they were being pushed from outside. They were being pushed from outside. That is another issue. And their meetings, even the last meeting in Accra, they mentioned the commissioner for Musa, missioner ECOWAS commissioner Musa mentioned that they had set a D date. So there was contradictory message in what he was saying after the Accra. He said that they had set the D day, and then at the same time we were waiting for the D day. So these people are confused. They were not up to anything productive, because he was saying had set the D day. The date is set for attacking Niger, going into Niger. And then he said they are waiting for the heads of state, to give a go ahead. So if the heads of state have set a D day for attacking, because they are the ones who approve. Now, how can you again be waiting for the heads of state to give you instruction? So it showed you that they did not have anything substantial. They did not have any resolve solution to this problem that they are going to go in and use a military solution. They didn't have, and that is why you saw ECOWAS going to Europe. They sent the ECOWAS chairperson, the chairperson of the ECOWAS commission, and then this guy Musa, they went to, I think they went to the European Union. They said they went to brief Europe. So in this unashamed, approach whereby you go there to present yourself like we are your slaves, tell us what to do, then we will go and do it for you. So all these weakened this echo. And then of course the divisions which I spoke about, that there was already divisions. Some of the members did not agree. Liberia did not agree. Guinea-Bissau did not agree to contribute troops. A lot of countries did not agree to this approach, because they said that within ECOWAS itself, there's people who have been changing the constitutions. There's people who have been changing constitutions and doing coup in the constitution. So what kind of this thing? And President George Weah of Liberia is the one who voiced this very much. And he said, which is that you people are talking about that you are going to use force? Within ECOWAS itself, people have been changing constitutional coup. People like Ouattara. And Ouattara was the first to say that he's going to contribute troops. Someone who has already done a coup in his own country. So President George Weah of Liberia saw this as a hypocritical affair. And then, of course, Cape Verde also did not agree. So a lot of countries were not willing. So they saw this as a sham approach, as way of looking at things. And of course, it was shame. They were gripped themselves by shame. So they started putting out pronouncements. ECOWAS started putting out pronouncements, but they were completely empty air. They were just empty slogans, because they were themselves ashamed of their approach. And they had trapped themselves. There's no way they could do it. They had trapped themselves that they had originally made pronouncements that they are going to attack. So they were, at the end of the day, trying to save themselves from the situation. And then, of course, there is the fact that Algeria came and backed the group, the triple threat, who had unified. So this put a lot of fear also in ECOWAS. And Algeria came and backed them and said, we will not allow any instability around this place. So this has pushed ECOWAS to almost a useless organization. And I'm not sure whether ECOWAS will come out of this hole it has dug itself in. It will be very difficult. It will be extremely difficult for ECOWAS to come out. So that is what I'm seeing with the.
Yeah, they cannot escape the shame that they have put upon themselves, unfortunately. But it's politics. People really don't care, can come out maybe tomorrow and be in good terms with the military authority. Now, so what is going to happen to Niger, and the way forward? now that this is a huge success to be able to get rid of France from the country, but internally there is a lot of, challenges economically and with all the sanctions. And then that's one. But also, secondly, in terms of the precedent now, Niger has put, and then prior to that, Mali and Burkina Faso, for the rest of African countries who are going through the same thing, especially with France. It's a responsibility. Do you think it will carry on without really disappointing us, the African community? Do you think they will push in this revolutionary journey?
Yeah, I think that what it needs to do right now, it needs to become much more stronger. And that relationship, it has started with Faso and Burkina Faso. We saw that it has really been committed to this relationship, that it has been sending trucks of food to Niger, because you remember the ECOWAS countries decided to put sanctions on Niger,
Yeah.
so they cannot access some of the food. What has really been committed to this relationship. So I think that the relationship between Mali, Burkina Faso, and Mali, I mean, between Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger really needs to be strengthened, and Niger needs to commit to this relationship. That is because this group of three could even be of gravity, a center of gravity for the unification of Africa. Majority of the people in Africa have lost interest in their heads of state because of overemphasizing election expense of the welfare of the people at the expense of the economic upward mobility. There's no upward mobility. The lives are becoming worse. Our people's lives are becoming worse. Yes, yet these people, all they are making noise about is that they democracy. You look at people like Bazoum, he was doing, those are the things he was doing. And they have been praising him that he was doing reform. And we don't understand which kind of reform he was doing when the country's resources are being taken by Europe and the United States and Canada and of course Germany. They are extracting the resources and taking them. So you wonder what kind of reforms when people are becoming much more poor, every day that goes by. So the government needs to step up when it comes to real reform and making sure the resources benefit them. And it needs to rely on the people because the people are the ones who have brought this far. So that means you have to have much more confidence and increase your confidence in people, because people will continue to support you as long as you are doing the right thing. And then you have to sell the resources at the right prices and give the benefit back to the people. So I think that if the government moves in this direction, it will be able to do reforms because they're tired of neo-colonialism, regardless of the slogans they're coming with, democracy, elections, and where they're hiding behind this to be able to plan the African that they are planting democracy in Africa. If the government continues to move in that direction of holding strong and being resolute like what it has done, I think it should be able even to defeat the United States. And of course, it needs to be very careful with the United States because the United States, like we have mentioned, has a lot of resources to carry out subversive activities and overthrow governments. That has been overthrowing governments here, for the last 150 years, in Latin America, Middle East, in Africa itself. The United States has been carrying out these activities. I think that the government needs to be, very, active in understanding these dynamics, answering to the people and then at the same time being very alert toward of the major enemy who is still in the country, who is the United States.
Now, as an African, where do we go from here, Kwame? In your view, it has definitely this situation has awakened a lot of Africans. There is some lesson learned uh, for individuals, activists, advocates, but also on a national level, those who want to follow in the footstep of Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso. There might be heads of states, but maybe they're afraid to do whatever it takes. So, yeah, as an African, where do we go from here?
I think, Mahlet, that the imperialists, the people who are representing the interests of the imperialists should be called out. We like President Ruto, the direction he has started, he has decided to. I think we need to call them out because these could be much more dangerous than even France to the interests of the African people. We saw President Ruto calling out the government in Niger and saying that it is illegitimate, it should come out of there, they should reinstate. So these internal enemies could be dangerous. And now it is the African people, we the people, we need to call out this hypocrisy of these heads of state. That one. And we have to increase our support for Niger. Because remember, if it was not the African people who came together and supported the government in Ethiopia, the United States wanted to overthrow the government in Ethiopia. You remember, the United States was to bring its military from Djibouti and intervene in Ethiopia. But the people, they countered the propaganda, all the Western propaganda which was being published. So I think that we need to be on our guard. But more than that, we as African people, we need to understand that democracy, voting does not equal economic development. That is the truth of the matter. China, the United States itself developed not on voting. Britain did not develop on voting. So we need to take this truth in, that voting does not equal economic development. And therefore, as African people, we need to start looking for a new path that is going to take us to the promised land of economic, for us to rapidly advance in industrialization as Africans. We need to start thinking in a new way and take a new path. We need to start challenging this false narrative that has been pushed by majorly, and which narrative has only benefited them with the continuation of the exploitation of Africa's resources. Now, there is new systems can be built. We have our own culture as African people. We can go in our culture and examine it and find a new system of governing ourselves. It doesn't have, for a government to be accountable, people don't have to go to vote. Because at the end of the day, voting is for accountability. Because the end accountable leadership. So if you can get accountable leadership without voting, you have already achieved what you wanted. Because what you want to achieve is an accountable government which takes care of the interests of the people. But they have been pushing the false narrative and the lies, which narrative has only been benefiting them, that when you vote, then you have reached the promised land. The people you have voted for, they are angels. All of a sudden, heaven will fall down for you if you follow what we are saying. So this narrative then has to be countered. So we have to increase our support for Niger. We have to increase our awareness also as African people. We have to point out those sellout leaders who are betraying the interests of the African people, and aggressively, we have to put the issue of a unified Africa at the center. You have seen what unity can bring between Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso. When they united, they were able to scare off enemy. This is what Nkrumah was talking about. The fight for the unification of the African continent, that is the ultimate fight. That this is the ultimate solution that Nkrumah was talking about, because he saw it. When we unify and work together, we will be able to rebuild our continent, Africa. And within 20 years, we could build an economy of $65 trillion. with a GDP per capita of just 20,000. Mind you, the United States is more than $50,000 GDP per capita. So $20,000 per capita in Africa, that is $65 trillion. So this is where we need to start looking at. How can we achieve this? This is the mission that we should dedicate ourselves to. The vision of building, and we need to start looking at this as African people, together with the African diaspora. We know that Nkrumah, when he was talking about Africans, he never distinguished between those on the continent and those, anyone who is of African descent is an African. So we need to start looking at these things realistically and then go out from the false narrative, because we have been enslaved silently because of this false narrative that they planted in the 1960s, and they have gone on to continue to compound it and use their media and use their press and use everything they have to continue to reinforce this false narrative that has not produced anything for us as Africans. Thank you very much, Mahlet.
Thank you, Kwame, very, very much. Thank you very much. Really, as usual, it was a very insightful, informative discussion we have with regards to Niger. As we put a closure, we have been doing this on a daily basis. Now that, France decides that, because we really have to come and look at it from various angles, and that's it. You have delivered. Thank you. Now let's look at the comments, or if there's any question in the chat section. Thank you all really for tuning in. A lot of people here. It's a lot for us. We will put, somebody asked your number, but we will give you an email. Hello, Calvin. Next, Catherine Herman. If Ruto can call out the revolutionaries, they should be able to call the other leaders that stay in power for 20 plus years. All these leaders sit in AU summits with. Is there any question? We need to, this is Obiahman. We need to demand the money stolen by leaders in foreign banks too. How could Ali Bongo be allowed to go free with 70 bank accounts? Well, a lot of them are like that. I mean, we have not seen, there was no heads of state or head of state that has been prosecuted for, all of them, they have bank accounts outside. I'm not sure if there is anyone who do not have that, but yeah, maybe it's arranged already to be like that, because it's not really a coup or a revolutionary act what happened in Bongo, I keep on mixing the last name of the man in the country, what happened in Gabon. All right, Dreams of Thomas Sankara, welfare of 1.6 billion Africans over abracadabra election of the Western democracy. Yeah, so you guys, I see only a comment. I don't see questions. So if not, we will end it here. Algeria has always been one of the foremost, Pan-African countries since 1960s. They voted to have a single Africa government in the early 60s. Yeah, it's a different, we just, always the one below all the countries, not the North. We often forget some of the revolutionary and Pan-African countries. I mean, for that matter, Gamal Abdel Nasser of Egypt as well was there.
Yes, Algeria has ever suffered under, it tested what French colonialism was. That is why you see the relationship here and France is very hot. there's a lot of friction between France and Algeria that refused to forget. And this is why it's important for us as Africans. You should not forget the that was imposed on us, the brutality, the slavery, terrorism, and the exploitation they have done to us with their World Bank and IMF. You should never forget this as an African. You should always tell it to your children. Always. Don't forget. Now, the Algerians refused to forget. They forget the brutality that France, subjected them to during the colonial period. They were fighting and pushing out France. I mean, the person who came out, I remember in the 60s, Nkrumah came out and denounced France, claiming that Algeria is part of France. so Algerian territory, when it was still colonizing it, that it is part of France. Algeria is part of France. And Nkrumah said that those people, are they crazy? How can you say that Algeria is part of Algeria, unlike other Arab countries, has tasted of that brutality and it fought for it. And there was a lot of Africans who were staying over there in Algeria. Even some of the Black Panthers, when they came from the United States, they were staying in Algeria. When they ran from, when the United States government was persecuting them and was destroying the Black Panther, because the Black Panther were fighting for the freedom of the Africans or the Black people in the United States. So people like Ben Ali, Ben Bella, he was called, he was very close to the Africans, and so he gave very strong speeches, even at the and of course at the United Nations and the Organization of African Unity. In one of the speeches at the Organization of African Unity, that we should all die a little so that South Africa can be free. In 1963, when they were forming the Organization of African Unity, he said all of us should die a little so that South Africa can live. And he was talking about the commitment we should all make to liberate South Africa from apartheid during that period, that we should sacrifice so that South Africa can live, South Africa, the blacks in South Africa, so that we can overthrow the apartheid regime. So Algeria was committed to the ideals of Pan-Africanism, and that has not gone away. You can trace it and see it even today. You see that recently, President Museveni was in Algeria. They were talking about corporations, and when he came, Algerian envoys, foreign ministers, and they came again to Uganda to try to have, again, they are talking about investments in oil with Uganda and all these. Algeria has continued to support the Western Sahara, who are being oppressed by Morocco. Morocco, even though in the past it even hosted the Casablanca group, which we have, to a certain extent, it diverted and went to look at as if they are Europeans, contrary to what Algeria, has recently continued to do. And that is very good for, actually, for the sub-Saharan Africa. If we have side, this makes the work of unifying Africa much more easier for us. It makes it much more easier because we may have Arabs who are African, the African Arabs, they don't want to be part of Algeria, which is a very big country, is part of that union. Then you have almost won. The others, they will be convinced definitely to come on board for a unified African state.
Thank you for that, explanation or historical background on Algeria. It's really a good one. Yeah, I really don't see any question. If you have questions and maybe I overlooked it, please post it again. Liberia, somebody says Liberia needs a coup. I have families in Liberia. Liberia election is next month and they haven't printed the voting list yet. So you want a coup just because of that reason? Uh, it's very shame for ECOWAS because it shows us that some of these presidents are the puppets of EU and USA. Oh yeah, definitely. Tita said, okay, 137 people watching. It even reached to the point 160 something at the, or 70. So 137 people watching, only 21 likes. So please bring that like, smash the like button, please. Thank you, Tita, for reminding them. Mikey, what are you saying? Niger can supply camels, so carry French military supplies to carry French military supplies out of the country for a good fee. Okay, no, but thank you all for your engagement here. Please do not forget to subscribe, like, and share the video. We started late, as you know, most of the time it's 1 hour before what we have started, or Eastern African time, 10 o'clock we start. But today we started an hour late, so that will make it late for us as well. But thank you. It has been 1 hour and 1 minute exactly. Unless Kwame, you have some kind of closing remarks. That's it for us. Yeah. Oh, thank you. Thank you for those of you who donated the super chat. I have seen. Thank you very much. I am me, and then there is another one. The name maybe I forgot, but I can get it here. Thank you really for your kind donation. Anything is good for us. So please, thank you. And furthermore, those of you who have the network, please share this video as soon as the streaming is over. That will also help us. And Kwame, did you put
Yeah,
somebody ask your numbers? Did you put email or?
yeah. So let the person reach out to our email. Let him write to our email. I think you have the email in the comment section, and then we will send him the number.
Yeah. So yeah, please do that.
Yes.
Okay. I'm sure you have heard. What's happening in Cameroon? Is there something happening? Not that I know of. Behman asked, would Kwame agree that the Sahel group now needs a country with an outlet to the sea, in bracket Togo? You heard that, Kwame.
No, I didn't hear that. Malik, can you repeat that?
It says, would Kwame agree that the Sahel group now needs a country with an outlet to the sea, in bracket Togo?
Yeah, of course. I think that they'll find a way. We have not seen Togo very vocal in that. And the thing which we underestimate, there's a statement which Nkrumah said that the differences, the commonality between us as Africans is much more stronger than the differences between us. So with the time, the African spirit prevails. Even when you look at Benin itself, which was giving itself to France, the elders originally warned the Benin president when he left the summit which happened in Nigeria, the so-called military summit, which they were preparing to use to attack Niger. When the president of Benin came back to his country, the elders warned him that he cannot engage in this kind of activity of attacking their brothers who are neighbors. So at the end of the day, the spirit will prevail. The African spirit, I believe that it will prevail. And of course, they already have a relationship with the Guinea Conakry. So I think that a way will be found definitely for having access to the sea. Absolutely, it will be.
Yeah, okay, good. Then I see that now
And,
some of your
and
questions.
the other thing is that Niger, of course, is connected to Algeria, and Algeria has not been hostile. And we've just spoken here about Algeria itself. Algeria is, on the sea, so that is already a way to the sea. And then you have Togo. Togo being hostile, and then you have also Guinea. So there's still going to be a way, to the sea, definitely.
Okay, question for Kwame Angelina Mwalo. We kick out the colonialists in our countries geographically, but do we have independence in mind? Question mark. Because there are many African people still thinking on Europe, our education system. Does it continue? No, but that's where it stops. But I hope you can understand what Angelina wanted to say. You're muted.
Can you
Or,
repeat it? The
okay. So we kick out the colonialists in our countries geographically, but do we have independence in mind? Because there are many African people still thinking of on Europe, our education system. That's where it stops.
no,
Yeah.
so you will be surprised that majority of the African people, what they want is a better continent. Majority of the people actually, they don't want to leave their home. They don't want to go to Europe. They don't want to go to the United States. People are not going to the United States and Europe because they want to go because of economic conditions. So majority of the people on the ground, it shows you that they have an independent mind and they want a better continent. And they leave because of the conditions, of the economic conditions. No one wants to leave their home because, as they say, east to west, home is the best. So it is the conditions. So this, naturally, people are independent, but it is the conditions which force them in that kind of behavior. So when we get the right leaders now, the leaders or the heads of state are the ones who have been disappointing us. Of course, some of them are bought, they are outright bought. Others, they just think that it is in their interest to have a divided Africa. But I think the spirit of independence within there is only the few heads of state who are at the top who are misguided about where the continent is supposed to go, that they are not clear. Some of them, majority of them, they don't have a clear vision where the continent is supposed to go or where it should go. So they end up misleading the whole continent, like what we are seeing, and always running to Europe. But if you go and ask a common person on the street, do you want your country to take a loan from the IMF? They will tell you that for what? They will tell you that they don't want it. The heads of state, they go and take it while themselves and enjoy themselves with their friends, the middle class and the ruling class, and pay themselves big salaries. The people, they don't care about these things of Europe, whether Europe gives us. They want to live in our means. The leaders should live in the means of their people. Why do you want to go and borrow the money? If that money is not going to build infrastructure or businesses, especially industries which are going to add value to your economy, why are you going to borrow that money just to pay salaries of the civil workers? So to answer the question simply, normal people, they want to be free, they want independence. And the normal people, they want Africa to be strong so that all of us African people can be respected all across the world. But of course, imperialism is always fighting back and, of course, conniving our heads of state. And this is the challenge which we have. But then, always in a revolution, the people who change society, they come from the ordinary people. They don't always come from the middle class. I'm talking about the ruling class. come from the class which is ruling the country, but they from the ordinary people like the Nkrumahs, the Lumumbas, all of them were ordinary people. They were not part of that group which was governing and helping the colonialists to continue to exploit the continent. So the people are there, but it's just that we have to support them. That is why we say join the Pan-African organizations, which join and support the work which people are doing. Join and support what, because we are saying that if we work together, we will be a problem, because within us, the people, the solutions are there. But imperialism, of course, and is always fighting back.
Interesting for the one, I think this question Ciendes tried to answer. Actually, less than 3% of Africans born on the continent are currently living outside the continent for various reasons. By comparison, about 9% of Europeans born in Europe are currently outside Europe. Okay, so that explains something. Now, there's a question, Kwame, for this is Ossie. Ossie asks you, for my observation, since joining this forum, it appears that African, in quotation, African unity will take generation as we, maybe you wanted to say, as well as Black people and Africans are very divided in the face of a common enemy.
So that question, I think that
Then a follow-up question. A follow-up question. Mikey asks, "Is there?" He agrees with that question, and then says, "Is there a blueprint to implement?"
So the blueprint is what Nkrumah was already written. Nkrumah wrote 21 books and pamphlets. And a lot of work has been done by our ancestors. And there's a lot of people who are out there on the ground. We've mentioned our organization, Connect Africa, is working. There's a lot of other organizations like Africa Continental Unity Party, if you have heard of working with it, definitely, and we have mentioned it numerous times. It is working, but all these organizations, they need support. The blueprint is there, it's just that it has not been implemented. Now, these days, people have been mentioning in Ghana that politicians have Ma's blueprint, which he made for Ghana, which was called the 7-year development plan. He was trying to implement a 7-year development plan before they overthrew him. Now, people, after Akufo-Addo's mismanagement of Ghana's economy, people have been mentioning that the country needs to go back to Nkrumah's 7-year development plan. So the blueprints are already there. If you go and examine even just a speech which Nkrumah gave in 1963 in Addis Ababa, that alone is a blueprint for the African continent. But these organizations which are struggling and are still down, which are, of course, many of them led by young people who are visionaries, they need the support of the people before they can reach that point of implementing. And so to remove these people who are entrenched in power and they have some amount of resources, it needs the people, coming behind all these people who are working and trying to, to bring this solution, to bring this new Africa. So it will surprise you. You look at the year, for example, 1945 or 1947, imperialism was still entrenched, or colonialism was still entrenched in the African. You would not suspect, or you would not even assume that within 10 years, Ghana would get independence. You would never think about it. And then about 15 years, many more independence. Actually, between 1957 got its independence, it took about 6 years, actually 5 years, and about 32 African countries more had gotten independence, we are free. So these things are very, very possible. So it's just that it is difficult if you don't see a solution at that point, that you see that you are overcrowded, you are overwhelmed by the power of the system. But no one knew that within a few years, Niger, Mali, Burkina Faso would be working together. No one even thought about it. 2 years ago, just last year, no one thought that Bazoum will be removed from power. So some of these things, you will not know where it is going to come from. And last year, somebody asked you, or somebody told you that France is going to be removed from Niger.
Mm-hmm.
Like, would you agree? You would never, you would say, like, you are crazy. You are crazy. There's no way France can be removed. It is entrenched there. And in Niger, there's Germany, there's the United States, there is Canada, there is this. I mean, you would say, like, possible. But it has been removed. So it is possible when the right events, have come, the right ingredients have come to the, to place, and they have happened, at the right time. It's very possible. This issue of unifying Africa is very, very possible if we work at it consistently. It has to be a consistent approach, purposeful approach towards the same objective. And I can assure you that it is very possible.
Yeah, indeed, when you bring those examples, okay, one can say, but yeah, mostly it's that's how we tend to think, that it's impossible, the unity of the continent. But thank you. Yeah, now really it's have a good evening from us, all right? Thank you for seeing this. What is your take on the French government banning artists from Mali, Niger, Burkina Faso from performing in France? Students being from the three countries bring denied visas to.
No,
I
that
mean,
is just.
the French government could take more action. By the way, just a week ago, we can share the news here. They also have tightened their rule on immigrants. They said only those who are seeking political asylum will be accepted. Those, what's the scientific name? Irregular immigrants. That one is, those will not be accepted. And in fact, they have moved their military to the border of Italy, and they're talking about we're gonna help Italy to protect its borders, to stop migrants from entering even Italy. That island, what's called Lampedusa or Lampedusa?
Lampedusa.
Yeah,
Lampedusa.
yeah. So there will be more action will be taken. I think that will not surprise me. But in terms of under international rule to ban artists, that has to do with culture, and students. I think maybe it's time to look in within. So anyway, the
Yeah,
questions.
I think what they are doing is just a reactionary. They are just carrying out a reactionary. It's just a reactionary approach that France is trying to carry out because it has been rejected. They try to intimidate. It's an intimidation tactic. You remember that when they suspended their uh, flights, the KLM, Air France, they suspended their flights to Burkina Faso. Burkina Faso decided to ban them, indefinitely. And then they came in back to try and beg. So even this, what they are doing is likely to backfire on them. But on the other hand, of course, as France is rejected more and more, and Europe is rejected more and more, of course, in their countries, they are likely to whip up the anti-black, rhetoric. That racist rhetoric will likely go up in Europe as the more they are rejected in Africa and they are pushed out. Then they will start pumping up this rhetoric of anti-black, anti-immigrant, and of course they will not say outright and black, but they will say immigrants from Africa, they should stay in Africa and stuff like that. They will amplify that kind of approach. But all these is a reaction because they have been rejected. People have said that we don't want you anymore. We don't want you in this, continent anymore. Get out of the continent. You have been exploiting us. We cannot take any more of your lies. So, it is just that reaction to the rejection that is going on. And of course, it is time for us to start being inward looking, because when you're talking about the skills, we can get these skills from anywhere, somewhere else. There's China, there's Russia. Russia has opened these spaces for us to go and study. And right now already, it's not that we are looking so much for knowledge. The continent where it has enough literacy rate to take off. We have more than 75% literacy rate right now on the continent. So this is enough for us to take off, even if we want to start reconstructing the continent. And of course, China is there, India is there. So all these countries are welcoming to, and India and China, they are the kings when it comes to science and technology, teaching science and technology. You have to go to India and China. So they are right now putting out, China alone is putting out more engineers than the United States. And what do you need to develop? You need the science and technology. So you don't need to go to Europe to do anything there, because science and technology has already declined in Europe. So it's just a reactionary approach which is going to backfire back on them, just like how the suspending of the Air France flights backfired on them when Burkina Faso turned around and banned the Air France completely from flying into into Burkina Faso. So it is likely even to backfire.
Okay, yeah, me, there's a saying I always like to say, and it's something I have seen, it's manifested in my life and in most of the things that I observe. There is an opportunity in every challenge. So, as also the artists, I don't know if you have followed, we shared the news when that news came, meaning the banning of students and artists here at Connect Africa. And I even shared a video of what, these elder artists from Mali were saying. So one of them, this is what he said: it's, if France choose to close off, let it close off. For us, he said, we have Africa, we can still travel within Africa. So let's take it an opportunity. We don't have to wait for the political leaders. We can take initiatives in our own little network and world, to promote that cultural exchange between African countries, just with civil society organizations, without really expecting for a new policy from our heads of states. I think it can be exploited in that way. I know that most of these Western African countries, the French speaking, go to France, and they get paid a lot in Europe. It's right, but I think there are ways to do it also in Africa. Yeah, but if they choose to do that, and they will get. But of course, if this narration now, if it gets somebody to look at it from the international law, then maybe they can be sued as well. I mean, they say that, but they cannot. They are not banning the footballers. Let them. Then it will be. They will be affected. Why don't they ban the footballers? They want. So it's a double standard. Yeah. Then it will be. There's no national team of France. I'm telling you. So we can also try to use it to sue, France, but also at the same time to start to look within. That's my 2 cents over there. And I have shared the article on immigrants CNS, so you can have a look at it. Somebody is asking Chad. Chad is. I saw you guys have been conversating about Ruto. We're gonna do a program about Ruto. President Ruto is a disappointment. That's the least I can say. Yeah. Would BRICS be an option for countries to join sooner? Mahlet, is it possible that Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger will become one nation and begin the unification of the continent? Wow, we have a good news for that. You know what? I keep on saying this, but I'm not making a program. Maybe I will do a short video, and with Kwame, we do a longer analysis. There is an initiative already back in the beginning of this year to form a federation. So this is even more good news, Bantu King, for you to hear. But of course, what we hear is every time what the Western, the mainstream media, bombard to us, and we don't get to see this local news that are coming out from these countries. Not even the African media, the African mainstream picks them up, like the South African broadcast, or I don't know, any bigger platform in the continent. Those ones just remain in the local news of Burkina Faso and Mali, that initiative. But there was, and then now the Niger thing came up, and it covered it. But there is, and I think this nation, they're gonna do bigger things. And Kwame said last time it can be an example of the African unity in its own way. Yeah, and teach something that organization. All right, then. Whenever we say goodbye, questions pop up. But after this, we are done. Ciao. Have a good evening. Thank you, Kwame, again for your time. Bye bye.